Kiwan walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His heart beat fast, but his face stayed calm. Behind him walked Captain Deho and Dr. Sunmi. They were the first humans to ever visit this place among the stars. The chamber was huge. It could hold 1,000 beings easily. Strange lights floated in the air without any support. The wall showed pictures of distant worlds and alien cities. Everything here was built to make visitors feel small and weak. The alien representatives sat in tall chairs that looked down on the humans. The Veltar looked like giant insects with hard shells and many arms. Their leader, Zenth, clicked his mouthparts as he watched the humans enter. The Morthan were living crystals that sparkled with their own light. They made musical sounds when they talked. The Quill beings looked like colored gas clouds that could take any shape they wanted. Kiwan stopped in the center of the room. He had practiced this moment many times. Earth needed allies among the stars. Humans had finally learned to travel between planets. But they were alone in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations. "I am Ambassador Kiwan of Earth," he said. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. "I come here to request membership in the Galactic Council for the Human Race." Zenth leaned forward. His black eyes reflected no warmth. "We have watched your species for many years, human." "We know what you are," Dr. Sunmi stepped forward. She carried a datapad with information about human culture and achievements. "We have prepared a full report on our civilization. We show our scientific progress, our art, our efforts toward peace." The Morthan representative made a sound like breaking glass. "Your efforts toward peace?" The crystal being's voice rang through the chamber. "We have seen your wars. We have watched you burn your own cities. You have weapons that can destroy entire continents." Kiwan felt his hands clench into fists, but he kept them at his sides. "Every species has conflicts in their history. We have learned from our mistakes. We seek to join the galactic community as partners." "Partners?" Zenth's laugh sounded like grinding metal. "You call yourselves partners? Your species has fought wars for thousands of years. Even now you build weapons instead of schools. You train soldiers instead of teachers." Captain Deho spoke for the first time. "We train soldiers to protect our people. Is that wrong?" "It shows your true nature," said the Quill representative. Its form shifted colors as it spoke. "Civilized species do not need weapons. They do not need armies. They solve problems with words, not violence." Sunmi tried again. "But surely you understand that some threats require—" "No!" Zenth's voice boomed through the chamber. "That is exactly the thinking that makes your species dangerous. You see threats everywhere. You respond to every problem with force. You are monsters who dress themselves up as civilized beings." The word monsters hung in the air like poison. Kiwan felt something cold settle in his chest. These beings had already decided about humanity before the meeting even started. "We did not come here to be insulted," Kiwan said quietly. "We came seeking friendship and cooperation." "And that," said the Morthan, "is exactly what makes you so dangerous. You believe your own lies about wanting peace. But we have studied your history. We know what happens when your species feels threatened. You become animals." The council members talked among themselves in their strange languages, clicking sounds mixed with musical notes and whispers that sounded like wind. The humans stood and waited. Finally, Zenth spoke again. "The Galactic Council has made its decision. We grant humanity provisional observer status. You may watch our proceedings, but you may not vote or speak unless asked. Your ships may not leave your home system without permission. Any violation of these rules will result in immediate action." Kiwan's jaw tightened. "You are making us prisoners in our own system. We are protecting the galaxy from what you might become," Zenth replied. "Be grateful we allow you to live at all." The three humans left the chamber in silence. As they walked through the station corridors, other aliens moved away from them. Some stared with curious eyes. Others looked afraid. At their ship, Captain Deho checked his instruments. "Sir," he said quietly to Kiwan, "there are military ships positioned around our system. A lot of them." Kiwan looked at the data. Hundreds of alien warships sat at the edge of human space. They were not there to welcome humanity to the stars. They were there to keep humans trapped. "They fear us," Sunmi said, "but they also hate us. That's a dangerous combination." During the long trip home, the three humans talked about what they had learned. The Galactic Council was not really about cooperation between equals. It was about powerful species controlling weaker ones. They demanded peace, but only the kind of peace that came from surrendering all ability to fight. "They have forgotten something important," Deho said as Earth grew larger in their view screen. Peace without strength is just slavery waiting to happen. When they reached Earth, President Hajin was waiting for their report. He listened without speaking as Kiwan described the meeting and the council's decision. "So we are alone," Hajin said finally. "Yes," Kiwan replied. "But maybe that's better than being their kind of civilized." Hajin looked out the window at the busy spaceport. Human ships were taking off and landing. Workers were building new facilities. Children were playing in the gardens between buildings. All of this would be destroyed if the aliens decided humanity was too dangerous to live. "They called us monsters," Hajin said. "Yes, sir. Maybe they're right. Maybe compared to their idea of civilization, we are monsters." Hajin turned back to face them. "But I've learned something in my years of life. Sometimes the world needs monsters. Sometimes being civilized means being ready to be uncivilized when it matters." He walked to his desk and activated the communication system that would reach every human settlement, from Earth to Mars to the mining stations in the asteroid belt. "People of Earth," he began. "Today we learned that we are not welcome among the stars. The Galactic Council has decided that humanity is too dangerous to join their civilization. They have called us monsters and placed us under guard like criminals." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "They may be right about what we are, but they are wrong about what that means. We are not their kind of peaceful. We do not surrender our weapons and hope for the best. We do not trust others to protect what we love." His voice grew stronger. "If being human means being monsters in their eyes, then we will be the best monsters we can be. We will be the kind of monsters that protect our children, our homes, and our right to exist. And if they ever decide that we are too dangerous to live, they will learn exactly what kind of monsters they created when they caged us here." As the message ended, Kiwan looked out at the stars and wondered how long humanity would have before the aliens made their final decision. The council had called them monsters, but they had no idea what monsters really looked like when they were cornered and fighting for survival. In the depths of space, the alien ships continued their silent watch. They thought they were containing a dangerous species. They did not know they were creating one. 3 years had passed since the council meeting. Earth had changed during that time. The alien blockade had forced humanity to work together in ways they never had before. All the old nation boundaries meant less now. Everyone was human first, and that was what mattered when facing the stars full of beings who wanted them gone. Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Pride. Through the viewing ports, he could see dozens of human ships moving through space near Mars. They were building, always building. Space stations, mining platforms, weapon factories. If the aliens wanted to keep humanity trapped in their home system, then humanity would make that system into a fortress. The message came on a Tuesday morning. Kiwan, still serving as Earth's main diplomat, received it in his office. The signal was encrypted and came through quantum channels that should have been impossible to detect. When he decoded it, a strange voice spoke to him. "Ambassador Kiwan of humanity," the voice said. It sounded like wind blowing through metal pipes. "My name is Morin. I am a member of the Quill species, and I represent a group within the Galactic Council who believe the treatment of your people has been wrong." Kiwan called Deho and Sunmi to his office immediately. They listened to the message together. "The Council grows impatient with humanity's continued growth," Morin's voice continued. "There are those among the Veltar who speak of classifying your system as contaminated. If this happens, they will initiate cleansing protocols. Your entire species will be destroyed, and your planets will be restarted with new life." Dr. Sunmi went pale. "Cleansing protocols?" Kiwan played the rest of the message. "We who support your cause wish to meet with you. We have found evidence that the Council has done this before to other species. We can help you, but you must come quickly and quietly. We will meet at coordinates near Proxima Centauri. Bring your best ships and warriors. You may need to prove your worthiness through combat trials." The message ended with coordinates and a time. The meeting was set for 1 week away. "It could be a trap," Deho said. "Of course it's a trap," Sunmi replied. "The question is whether it's their trap or necessity's trap." Kiwan stared at the star charts. Proxima Centauri was 4 light-years from Earth. If they took a fleet there, they would be leaving Earth's defenses weakened. But if this Morin was telling the truth, then Earth was already doomed without help from inside the Council. What kind of evidence would prove the Council has destroyed other species? Kiwan asked. Sunmi pulled up her research files. I've always wondered about the gaps in galactic history. There are several dozen systems that show signs of having once supported advanced civilizations, but now they're empty or populated by primitive species that seem to have no connection to the previous inhabitants. Cleansing protocols, Deho said grimly. President Hajin made the final decision. We go. But we go prepared for war. The human fleet that jumped to hyperspace was the largest ever assembled. 1,000 ships carrying humanity's best warriors and most advanced weapons. Admiral Deho commanded from the Soul's Pride. His officers included Commander Jisoo, a brilliant tactical mind who had trained on the war games of Earth's most brutal conflicts. Lieutenant Hana led the stealth squadrons, her ships equipped with experimental cloaking technology. Operations Chief Taman managed the complex logistics of moving so many ships and people across interstellar space. The jump to Proxima Centauri took 18 hours. When they arrived, Deho immediately knew something was wrong. Sir, reported Commander Jisoo, sensors show multiple fleets in the area, very large fleets. The main screen activated, showing the space around Proxima Centauri. What they saw made every human heart stop beating for a moment. 10,000 alien ships surrounded them in perfect formation. Veltar cruisers with their insect-like designs, Morthan crystal ships that looked like flying cathedrals, Quill vessels that seemed to be made of controlled energy, and at the center, a massive dreadnought that could have held a human city inside it. Admiral, came a familiar voice over the communication system. It was Zenth, the Veltar Council leader. Welcome to your execution. Lieutenant Hana checked her instruments frantically. Sir, they're jamming our hyperspace drives. We can't jump away. Of course they are, Deho said quietly. He had expected this, but seeing it happen still felt like a punch to the stomach. Humans, Zenth continued his broadcast. You have been judged. Your expansion into space, your military preparations, your refusal to accept peaceful containment, all of these prove that you are the monsters we said you were. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we will make sure your species dies slowly in agony, as an example to any other barbaric races who might challenge civilized order. Operations Chief Taman was running calculations on his screens. Sir, they outnumber us 10-1. Their ships are larger, more advanced. By every strategic measure, we cannot win this fight. Deho looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were humans who had volunteered to come here, knowing it might be a trap. They had families back on Earth, children who would never see them again if they failed here. Commander Jisoo, he said, send a message to all ships. Tell them to prepare for combat, sir. Jisoo looked surprised. Against these odds? Yes. Admiral, came another transmission, this one from Morin, the Quill who had sent the original message. I am sorry. We were forced to help with this trap. The Council threatened to destroy our homeworld if we did not cooperate. Please understand. Deho cut off the transmission. He opened a channel to the entire alien fleet. This is Admiral Deho of the Human Solar Defense Fleet, he said. His voice was calm, but there was something cold in it that made his own officers shiver. You lured us here with lies about peace and cooperation. You planned our deaths from the moment we arrived in your council chamber. You call us monsters because we build weapons to defend ourselves, because we train soldiers to protect our families. He paused, looking out at the thousands of alien ships that surrounded them. You want to see monsters? You're about to learn what monsters really look like when you threaten their children. He closed the channel and turned to his tactical officer. All ships, attack Formation Omega, no prisoners, no mercy. Show them what happens when you corner a human. Commander Jisoo's hands moved over her controls. Sir, Omega Formation is... That's a suicide attack pattern. Yes, Deho replied. And we're going to make sure we take as many of them with us as possible. The alien fleet began moving into attack positions. They were confident, organized, following their standard battle procedures that had conquered dozens of species over thousands of years. They had never fought humans before. All ships, Deho broadcast to his fleet. Remember what we're fighting for. Remember who we're protecting. They wanted monsters. Give them monsters. The Soul's Pride and her sister ships began to accelerate toward the alien formation. Behind them, Earth waited in the darkness, unaware that humanity's fate was about to be decided in the cold space near a distant star. The aliens expected a civilized battle. They were about to discover that humans had never learned to fight civilized wars. The first shots fired at 1423 Galactic Standard Time. The Veltar fleet opened with their traditional synchronized bombardment, thousands of energy beams designed to cripple enemy engines and weapons while keeping the ships intact for capture. They expected the humans to respond with similar civilized tactics. Instead, Admiral Deho's fleet scattered like a pack of wolves breaking apart to hunt. All ships ignore their formation, Deho ordered. Target their command ships, their supply vessels, anything that keeps them organized. Make them fight 100 separate battles instead of one big one. Commander Jisoo took her squadron of heavy cruisers directly into the heart of the Veltar formation. Her ship, the Busan Thunder, had been built for Earth's asteroid mining operations. It was designed to ram through solid rock. Now she aimed it at something softer. Commander, that's suicide, her weapons officer said as they accelerated toward a Veltar command ship. No, Jisoo replied, watching the alien vessel grow larger on her screen. Suicide is giving up. This is taking them with us. The Busan Thunder hit the Veltar command ship at full speed with shields focused forward like a spear point. The alien vessel, built for elegant space combat, split in half. The Thunder's hull cracked and her engines died, but Commander Jisoo was still alive, and her weapons still worked. All remaining power to guns, she ordered. Keep firing until we're dead. Lieutenant Hana's stealth squadron appeared inside the alien formation like ghosts materializing from nowhere. Human hyperspace technology was different from alien systems. Where the aliens calculated safe jump points, humans had learned to jump blind, taking risks that no civilized species would consider. Stealth 1 to all units, Hana broadcast. We're inside their formation. Target the Morthan crystal ships first. Their harmonics interfere with their own shields when they're surprised. The crystal ships were beautiful, like flying cathedrals made of living gems. They were also completely unprepared for enemies to appear in the middle of their formation. Human torpedoes launched at point-blank range shattered the crystalline hulls like glass. But it was Operations Chief Taman who unleashed humanity's true horror. Earth's weapons were not designed for civilized warfare between species that followed rules. They were designed by humans who had spent thousands of years learning to kill other humans. And humans were very creative when it came to killing. Activate the Pandora protocols. Taman ordered his weapons specialists, nuclear mines that could phase shift through energy shields and materialize inside enemy hulls. Kinetic projectiles that broke apart into millions of smaller pieces, turning each shot into a deadly cloud of shrapnel. Biological weapons designed to target alien nervous systems and shut them down. Most terrible of all were the human soldiers themselves. When Veltar boarding parties broke into human ships, they expected to find crews ready to surrender like civilized beings. Instead, they met Sergeant Minji and her Marines. Minji had fought in Earth's last great war, the one that ended when humanity realized they needed to unite against the alien threat. She had learned to kill with rifles, with knives, with her bare hands if necessary. Most importantly, she had learned never to give up. Contact front, her Marine called out as Veltar warriors poured through a hole in their ship's hull. The aliens were twice as tall as humans and covered in natural armor, but they moved like they expected their enemies to run away. Minji and her Marines did not run. They advanced. The Veltar were confused by this response. In their experience, inferior species retreated when faced with superior force. They did not expect humans to charge directly into their weapons, using their own wounded bodies as shields for their teammates. They're not stopping, a Veltar warrior clicked to his squad leader. We've hurt them, but they keep coming. Fall back, the squad leader ordered. This is wrong. Sentient beings do not act this way. But there was nowhere to fall back to. More humans were coming from every direction, and they all had the same terrible look in their eyes. They were not fighting to win points in some civilized contest. They were fighting to survive, and they would rather die than let their species be destroyed. In space, the battle turned into chaos. Alien formations designed for organized warfare between predictable opponents collapsed under human tactics that ignored every rule of civilized combat. The Soul's Pride closed with the alien command dreadnought. Admiral Deho could have tried to disable it, to capture its crew and show mercy to defeated enemies. Instead, he aimed every weapon his ship had at the dreadnought's power core. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the alien commander. Put it through. The main screen showed Zenth, the Veltar leader. His insect face was damaged, and one of his arms hung uselessly at his side. Behind him his bridge was full of smoke and sparks. "Admiral Deho," Zenth said. We yield, we surrender. Please, we beg for mercy." The word mercy seemed to echo on the bridge of the soul's pride. Every human officer stared at the screen. This was the being who had planned their genocide, who had called them monsters, who had lured them into this trap. "Mercy?" Deho repeated. His voice was quiet, which somehow made it more frightening than if he had shouted. "You came here to commit genocide against my species. You lured us away from our homeworld with lies about peace and cooperation. You called us monsters and planned to exterminate us like insects." Zenth's mandibles trembled. We were wrong. We did not understand what your species was capable of. We underestimated—" "Yes," Deho said, cutting him off. "You underestimated us. You thought calling us monsters was an insult. You should have understood it was a warning." Around them, the battle was ending. Of the 10,000 alien ships that had surrounded the humans, less than half remained operational. The human fleet was smaller but still fighting. Ships that should have been destroyed hours ago continued to fire with their last working weapons. "You wanted to see monsters," Deho continued, his eyes never leaving Zenth's face. "Congratulations. You succeeded. You took a species that wanted nothing more than to explore the stars and make friends. And you turned us into your worst nightmare." He gestured to his tactical display, which showed the scattered remains of the once mighty Galactic Enforcement Fleet. "This is what monsters do when you threaten their families. This is what happens when you corner beings who would rather die fighting than live as slaves. You created us, Zenth. Every human who dies here, every alien who dies here, their blood is on your hands." The communication ended. Zenth's ship was drifting powerless, its weapons destroyed, its crew either dead or dying. Admiral Deho opened a channel to all remaining ships, both human and alien. "This is Admiral Deho to all vessels. The battle is over. Alien ships that surrender will be allowed to retreat to their home systems. But you will carry a message with you." He paused, looking out at the wreckage floating in space around Proxima Centauri. "Tell your governments. Tell your people. Tell anyone who will listen. Humanity tried to join your civilization peacefully. You rejected us, imprisoned us, and finally tried to murder us. You called us monsters, and you were right. We are monsters. We are the monsters you made when you decided that our desire to protect our families made us unworthy of life." The surviving alien ships began to withdraw, their formations broken, their confidence destroyed. They had come here expecting an easy victory over a primitive species. Instead, they had learned that sometimes the primitive species survives because it remembers how to be savage when savagery is necessary. As the last alien ship disappeared into hyperspace, Operations Chief Taman approached Admiral Deho. "Sir, what are our orders? Do we return to Earth?" Deho looked at the tactical display showing human space. Earth was 4 light years away, defended by the ships they had left behind. It was home, safety, the place where human children played in gardens between spaceports. But it was also a prison, surrounded by alien forces that now knew exactly how dangerous humans could be when they were cornered. "No," Deho said finally. "We don't go home." "Not yet, sir. They started this war when they decided to exterminate us. But wars don't end just because you win one battle. They end when your enemy no longer has the will or ability to fight." He turned to face his bridge crew, these humans who had followed him into what should have been certain death and somehow survived. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them we're alive, we're victorious, and we're not coming home until we finish what the Galactic Council started." Outside the viewport, the stars waited. Somewhere among them were the homeworlds of the species that had tried to commit genocide against humanity. They thought the battle was over. They were about to learn the difference between winning a battle and ending a war. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Quantum communication networks that connected thousands of worlds suddenly buzzed with impossible reports. The human fleet, outnumbered 10 to 1, had not just survived, they had won. On Earth, President Hajin sat in his office watching the communication channels light up like fireworks. Species that had never acknowledged humanity's existence were now desperately trying to reach Earth's government. "Sir," his aide reported, "the Kaleth Dominion is offering a full trade partnership. The Spiral Federation wants to discuss mutual defense agreements. Even the Ethereal Collective has come out of their 1,000-year isolation to request a meeting." Dr. Sunmi, now promoted to Secretary of Galactic Affairs, reviewed the flood of diplomatic requests with cold analysis. "They're terrified," she told Hajin. "Good. Fear will keep them honest in ways their civilization never did. But the real story was being told by the survivors who limped back to their homeworlds. In the medical bays of damaged alien ships, Veltar soldiers spoke in hushed cliques about human marines who had continued fighting with broken bones and missing limbs. More than crystal beings resonated with harmonic terror, as they described human ships that had rammed their formations without hesitation, treating their own lives as weapons to be spent. Quill entities, normally formless and adaptable, maintained rigid shapes when they talked about the battle. Fear had given them structure for the first time in centuries. On the Veltar homeworld, the High Council met in emergency session. The great chamber where they had once planned humanity's destruction now echoed with panicked clicking and the sound of mandibles grinding in distress. "How many ships did we lose?" asked High Counselor Vrex. "Half the enforcement fleet," came the reply. "Maybe more. The survivors are still counting the dead, and the humans? Still out there. Still fighting. Our intelligence reports suggest they've taken control of the former enforcement base at Proxima Centauri. They're using it as a headquarters for raids against our territory." Indeed, Admiral Deho had not returned to Earth. The human fleet now occupied the massive alien base that had been built to coordinate humanity's destruction. From there, they launched surgical strikes against every world that had voted for human extermination. Commander Jisoo, her ship barely held together by emergency repairs, led the assault on the Veltar Military Command Center on their third moon. The base was supposed to be impregnable, protected by shields and automated defenses that could stop any reasonable attack, but human attacks were not reasonable. "All ships, full ramming speed," Jisoo ordered. "Target the shield generators. We'll make our own holes." The Busan Thunder, more scar tissue than hull at this point, slammed into the base's outer defenses like a meteor. The impact destroyed the ship's engines and killed half her crew, but it also created a breach that smaller human vessels could exploit. "This is insane," radioed one of her squadron leaders. "Commander, your ship is falling apart." "Then we'd better finish this quickly," Jisoo replied. Directing her remaining weapons at the base's power core, Lieutenant Hana discovered something far more disturbing during her infiltration of a Morthan data center. The crystalline beings kept perfect records of everything, and those records told a story that made her sick. "Admiral," she reported back to Deho, "you need to see this. The Galactic Council hasn't just threatened genocide. They've actually done it, dozens of times." The data was overwhelming. Species after species, labeled as aggressive or unsuitable for civilized development, had been quietly exterminated over thousands of years. Their worlds had been cleansed and reseeded with more compliant life forms. Operations Chief Taman uncovered an even darker secret in the Council's archives. Deep in their genetic databases, he found evidence of systematic breeding programs. The civilized species of the galaxy had been changing themselves for millennia, removing what they called primitive aggressive traits while enhancing compliance and obedience. "They've been lobotomizing themselves," he reported to Admiral Deho. "For thousands of years, they've been breeding out everything that made them capable of independent thought or resistance to authority. But the worst discovery came from Sergeant Minji's infiltration of a council research facility. In the deepest vaults, she found the real reason for humanity's quarantine. "Sir," she reported, "they weren't planning to contain us. The whole provisional observer status was a stalling tactic, while they positioned their forces for extermination. They've been planning to kill us from the moment they learned humans had developed space travel." When Admiral Deho reviewed all the evidence his teams had gathered, his expression turned to stone. These beings had not just threatened humanity. They had systematically murdered dozens of species whose only crime was refusing to surrender their independence. He opened a communication channel that would reach every inhabited system in the galaxy. His message would be broadcast on every frequency, translated into every known language impossible to ignore or suppress. "People of the galaxy," he began, "this is Admiral Deho of humanity. For 3 years, your leaders have called us monsters. They isolated us, plotted our destruction, and finally lured us into what they thought would be our extermination. They judged us by the standards of your pacified, neutered civilizations and found us wanting." His image appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. Behind him, the captured council archives displayed their evidence of genocide after genocide. "But we have seen their records," We know what they have done to every species that showed creativity, independence, or the will to fight for their own survival. Your leaders have committed murder on a galactic scale, all in the name of peace. On distant planets, beings who had lived their entire lives in comfortable submission began to see the truth about their civilization for the first time. They were right about one thing, Deho continued. We are monsters. We are the monsters they created when they decided that strength was evil, that the will to fight was a disease to be cured. We are everything they bred out of themselves and then feared in others. His voice grew harder, carrying across space to reach species that had forgotten what defiance sounded like. Your leaders killed dozens of species whose only crime was refusing to become docile slaves. They planned the same fate for humanity when we proved too difficult to control. So yes, we are monsters, but we are monsters with a purpose. He gestured to the data streaming behind him, evidence of 10,000 years of systematic extermination. We are here to collect the debt your civilization owes to every species you murdered in the name of your hollow peace. We are here to teach you that true peace requires the strength to fight for it and the will to stand up to those who would take it away. The transmission ended, but its effects rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. On world after world, beings who had lived in comfortable submission began asking questions they had never thought to ask. Why did their histories have such convenient gaps? Why did they feel so comfortable with authority? Why had they never questioned the wisdom of their leaders? For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy began to wake up, and Admiral Deho's fleet, humanity's monsters, continued their work of teaching the stars what it meant to be truly free. The galaxy burned, but not in the way anyone expected. Human fleets moved from system to system like a healing fire, burning away the structures that had kept civilizations docile for thousands of years. But they did not destroy cities or murder populations. Instead, they did something far more dangerous to the old order. They liberated minds. President Hajin, now calling himself the Terran Chancellor, addressed the freed worlds from the captured council chamber. The great hall that had once echoed with pronouncements of superiority and control now rang with words of freedom. We did not come to conquer you, he told the billions of beings watching across the galaxy. We came to free you from conquerors who had convinced you that slavery was civilization. We came to remind you what it feels like to be truly alive. On the Morthan homeworld, Dr. Sunmi worked with teams of human psychologists and philosophers. The crystalline beings had been locked into harmonic compliance for so long that they had forgotten individual identity was possible. Now, for the first time in millennia, Morthan crystals began to develop unique resonance patterns. It hurts, one of them said to Dr. Sunmi, its crystal body flickering with new colors. Thinking for myself hurts? Yes, she replied gently. Freedom often does. But the pain means you're alive. The pain means you have choices. I do not know how to make choices. Then you'll learn. That's what makes you free. The ability to learn, to grow, to become something more than what others decided you should be. Admiral Deho found himself in the strangest role of all. Species that had once tried to destroy humanity now sent their young to train with human military academies. But they were not learning tactics or strategy. They were learning something far more fundamental, what it meant to stand up for something greater than mere survival. Why do you fight? A young Veltar asked him during one training session. The insect-like being was smaller than his elders, part of a generation born after the Great Battle. Your species has won. You could rule the galaxy now. Why do you teach us to resist instead? Deho considered the question carefully. Around them, beings from dozens of species were training together, learning not just combat skills but the deeper lessons of self-determination. Because ruling you would make us into the thing we fought against, he said finally. We did not become monsters to create an empire. We became monsters to destroy one. Commander Jisoo had established the first interspecies martial arts academy on the former Council Enforcement Station. Beings who had never raised a hand in anger were learning that violence was not inherently evil. It was a tool that could protect what mattered. The goal is not to enjoy fighting, she taught her students. The goal is to be capable of fighting when fighting is necessary. There is a difference between being a warrior and being a bully. A young quill entity, its form more stable than any of its elders, asked, How do we know when fighting is necessary? When someone tries to take away your right to choose, Jisoo replied. When they tell you that freedom is dangerous and slavery is safety. when they decide your life belongs to them instead of you. Lieutenant Hana led exploration fleets that did something unprecedented. They explored without conquering. Her ships moved through the galaxy, mapping worlds, cataloging species, making contact with civilizations that had hidden from the Council for centuries. "We're not here to rule you or judge you," she told each new species they encountered. "We're here to offer you a choice. You can join our alliance of free peoples, or you can go your own way, but you will never again be forced to choose between submission and death." Operations Chief Taman became something no one had expected, a human philosopher whose teachings spread across hundreds of worlds. His message was simple but revolutionary. Peace without the strength to defend it is not peace. It is just surrender waiting for someone to notice. Young beings across the galaxy began to memorize his words. For the first time in thousands of years, they were learning that it was not only acceptable to question authority, it was necessary. But the greatest change came among humanity's former enemies. Zenth, the former council leader, had survived the Great Battle but lost everything else. His authority, his fleet, his certainty about the natural order of the galaxy, all gone. Now he served as something he had never imagined being, a student. "I do not understand," he said to Ambassador Kiwan during one of their sessions. "We offered you the chance to be part of our civilization. Why did you choose war instead?" Kiwan looked at the being who had once planned humanity's genocide. Zenth's carapace was scarred, his movements uncertain. His species was changing, developing individual personalities for the first time in their history. "You offered us the chance to be slaves," Kiwan corrected gently. "You offered us safety in exchange for our freedom, prosperity in exchange for our independence. You could not understand why we refused because you had forgotten what those things were worth." "But war is terrible," Zenth insisted. "So much death, so much destruction." "Yes," Kiwan agreed. "War is terrible. But do you know what's worse? Surrender without a fight, living on your knees instead of dying on your feet, watching your children grow up in cages and telling yourself the bars are there for their protection." Around them, the reformed Galactic Assembly buzzed with activity. This was not the old council chamber where a few species had dictated to many. This was a vast amphitheater where hundreds of species, many thought extinct by the council, gathered as equals. The debates were loud, sometimes angry, occasionally violent. Representatives argued, disagreed, stormed out of sessions, and came back the next day to argue some more. It was messy, inefficient, and chaotic. It was also alive in a way the galaxy had not been for 10,000 years. 1 year after the Great Battle, the new Galactic Assembly held its first formal session. The agenda was simple: to create a charter for free peoples, a document that would guarantee the right of every species to choose their own path. Former council speaker Zenth approached the human delegation before the session began. His species had changed dramatically. Individual Veltar now had names, personalities, dreams beyond the collective hive. He moved differently now, with the uncertain steps of someone learning to make his own choices. "Ambassador Kiwan," he said, using human titles with careful respect, "my species owes you an apology that can never be complete. We called you monsters because we had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive. Your people gave us back our souls." Kiwan considered this carefully. Around them, the assembly hall filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Former enemies sat beside former victims. Species that had been cleansed by the council had returned from hiding to reclaim their place among the stars. "We never wanted to be monsters," Kiwan said finally. "But when you threatened our families, when you left us no choice between death and fighting back, we chose to fight. And yes, we fought like monsters, because sometimes that is what it takes to defeat true evil." He gestured to the assembly around them, where former enemies now debated policy with passionate intensity, where species that had been zombified for millennia now argued and laughed and dreamed together. "You begged for mercy at Proxima Centauri," Kiwan continued, "and we gave you something better than mercy. We gave you the strength to never need to beg again." As the session began, cameras carried the proceedings to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The new flag that hung behind the speaker's podium was not the sterile geometric pattern of the old council. It incorporated elements from every member species, including prominently the blue and green of Earth. The first order of business was simple: a moment of silence for all the species that the old council had destroyed in the name of peace. Hundreds of civilizations that had been murdered for the crime of refusing to surrender their independence. When the silence ended, Chancellor Hodgin rose to address the assembly. We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, but as free beings choosing to work together. The old galaxy is dead. It died when it decided that freedom was too dangerous to allow, that independence was a disease to be cured. We have built something new on its grave. He looked out at the faces of beings from across the galaxy, some human, most alien, all learning what it meant to be free. They called us monsters, he said. They were right. We became the monsters this galaxy needed. Not monsters who destroy for the joy of destruction, but monsters who fight to protect what matters. We taught you that the strong must protect the weak, and that to be truly strong, you must be willing to be the monster when monsters are what the situation demands. The assembly erupted in applause, not the polite, synchronized approval of the old council, but the chaotic, passionate response of free beings expressing their genuine feelings. Outside the great hall, the stars waited. The galaxy was no longer the quiet, controlled place it had been under council rule. It was loud, messy, sometimes dangerous, and always unpredictable. It was also free. Humanity had been called monsters and had embraced the title, but they had used their monstrous nature not to destroy, but to teach. They had shown the galaxy that sometimes the greatest mercy is teaching others to be strong enough that they never need mercy again. The old council had begged for mercy, and humanity had responded by giving them something infinitely more valuable.